Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Comedy Studio and Tales from the Inside, where we have comics and storytellers from around the country and sometimes around the world. And now, would you please welcome your host for tonight, Angela Sawyer.
Hi, everybody. It's very nice to talk to you. Thank you so much for welcoming us onto your computer screen and or other tiny device that you have where you are stuck in your house. It's really lovely to be here. So Tales from the Inside, if you've never joined us before, is a storytelling show that used to happen in my living room once a month. And during quarantine, we've been doing it on computers. And it's basically a show to let people really stretch out and kind of be who they already are. Which maybe you're like, what? Everyone already does that anyway. Except I don't think they do. People who do stand up a lot and do perform a lot, they practice all the time. So they get to say their words in the right order many times and make the gestures at the right moments kind of thing. And I really like it when those people are forced to think on their feet, be the person that they actually are, just kind of around. And we get to visit the inside of their skulls a little bit. And it's nice. It feels like friends, which I want more of. And the best way I've found of getting them is to force them to come into my house. So it's been cool. One of the things I really like about the show is that I like all of the people on it, which seems like all shows should be that way, but it's really nice when it actually is. So I'm very psyched for the performance that you're going to hear. I think you'll have a good time. I'm going to start us off just so it's not weird for anybody. And I want to tell you, we've been doing this show for months now, and so I feel like I've said every single thing that I could have ever possibly thought out loud at this point. So hopefully I'm not telling you a story that you've already heard. We'll see. But I want to talk to you about, I'm somebody, you can probably tell by my sense of decoration in my house, that I have held not normal jobs most of my life. I do have one now. I'm a secretary in an office. I timed it very well by accident. I finally grew up and got a normal person job at 48 years old. Good for me. And but before that, I just worked in weird places for people who can't function. I mostly worked in record stores around town, but that's not enough to live on. So I always had these strange pick-me-up places that I would work at. And so I autographed baseballs for a living for a while. I was the not very well-known Red Sox, Rico Petrocelli. And whenever I tell people that, they don't know who Rico Petrocelli is, which is fine. I think you have to be 65 years old to remember. But what they do want to know is how I learned to sign Rico. And the thing is, I just wrote the word Rico Petrocelli. I just used my own handwriting for that. And then someone took the baseballs that I wrote on and sold them on eBay to unsuspecting 10-year-old boys whose lives I was okay with ruining, apparently. I was just okay with making 10-year-old boys unhappy, which that's what's wrong with me. I worked for a while. I had a job sewing patches on Bill Cosby sweaters, on which you could make many sad jokes. But for me, the fun part was I had to go to a creepy warehouse every week and pick up big bags of clothing. And I had never met Bill Cosby. I only met a troupe of 1,000-year-old women who hung out together in the middle of a creepy warehouse with bags of cloth. And for me, that was like a nice apprenticeship to being an older person. I did that when I was in my 20s, and I wondered sometimes, what will it be when I grow into a witch as an old lady? What will happen? And as you can see, right now, my celebrity twin is the hag that gave apples to Snow White. So I feel like I got where I needed to go, I met a bunch of weird old ladies, and now I get to be one for somebody else. So it's nice. Maybe the weirdest job that I ever had in my life, I've used to write about music for a living, which I know sounds insane. And it was even then. That's not a way people make money. But I wrote about music for a living. I like music a lot. And for a while, I had a job writing about bands in Cleveland for a Cleveland newspaper. And that is not that weird. The thing that is weird about it is that I had not ever set foot in Cleveland. What happened was I was living here in Boston. I've lived here for 30 years. And back in the 1990s, when you knew people, they would just disappear out of your life at random and you wouldn't know where they went because there was no social media to keep track of them. And you would just hope you'd see them again some year. And I knew a guy like that whose nickname around town was Michigan Justin. And he was called Michigan Justin because he was obsessed with music from Michigan. I don't know if you guys know any music people, but that is not how it breaks down. That's not what people do. They don't, it's not geographically based. No one is like, you know what, I'm going to focus on just one town. That's weird. Like, even if your town is New York or London or something, that's still weird. But that's what this guy did. He was very focused on music from Michigan. And so I hadn't seen him in a couple of years, didn't know what he was up to. And he called me up one day on a landline phone, which is a feat in itself because he had to figure out what number to dial. and he called me up and asked me, he was like, hey, I moved to Cleveland and I got a job as an editor for this newspaper and I can't find anyone to write about bands for me. And I knew immediately that he was full of shit. He must be lying because writing about bands is not like, if you were offering to pay someone for that, you wouldn't be able to keep people away. That's like, you can get anyone to do that. There's no expertise. There's no school. You just have to be a person under 50. And then everybody's like, great, you're hired. So I was like, you can't find anyone in the state of Ohio to write music reviews for you. You got to call some weirdo from Boston. And so I assumed that if he called me, he wanted something that only I could bring to the table. And that therefore we were only going to write about bands that I knew from Michigan. And I was like, okay. I got ready. I started doing, I went to the record store and I was like, tell me about some more bands from Michigan because I got this new job I'm going to write about for this dude. And then he was like, I'll send you some CDs in the mail. And 6 weeks later, I got a package in the mail, opened it up, very excited to figure out what I was going to have to say about obscure Michigan music. And out fell a bunch of Billy Joel and Livingston Taylor CDs. And those are not that. And so I was like, oh, this is a very different job than I imagined. This is not what I thought it was going to be. And I had no idea what to say. I've spent my whole life being interested in bands like these and not in bands that people have heard of or care about or like or are enjoyable or listenable or fun. So I just was at a loss and I had to really kind of step back and sit down and take a day on a park bench and be like, how do I say something about these famous people? And finally I wrapped my head around it. I was like, okay. And I sat down at my little typewriter and I was like, hey, if you got a mom, she is going to love this dude, Billy Joel. She's going to love him. It will blow her mind. He has all these songs and they're just about how nice ladies are. It's going to be great. So I then typed that up and mailed it off to my friend, Michigan Justin. And he printed them in a Cleveland paper. And amazingly enough, that went well. He called me back up and he was like, great job, so great, very original. And I was like, not original at all, honestly. And he was like, no, very perfect, keep doing that. And he would just kept sending me stuff in the mail and I would write it up and I would write about people everybody knows. And that was, that could have gone well. The only problem was, little by little, his packages started showing up late. And pretty soon there was a situation where I had a due date to write about Frank Sinatra or Bon Jovi, but I had no CD to check out to make sure, to listen to ahead of time and be like, ooh, they took a big left turn. But I was like, hey, these are famous people. There's no big left turn. I'll be fine. I'll just say what I think of Bon Jovi. And so I just went through all the relatives. I was like, man, if you got a second cousin on her way to prom, she's going to love the Stu Livingston Taylor. She will be so set. Just get her this CD. So everything went well. And Justin liked what I was doing. And he called me up. And the more ridiculous I was, the more he was like, great job. Keep going. So eventually he's like, he called me and he said, I'm going to expand your job. I want you to write about shows. And I was like, you remember that I don't live near you, correct? Like, I'm not in Cleveland. How would I write about shows there? And he was like, oh, no. It'll just be show previews. It'll just be like a show that is coming up, and I'll tell you who's going to be on the bill, and you can research them and check them out. And this is at a time when to see a photo on the computer, you would click on the photo and then you would spend 5 minutes watching the photo slowly come down the screen. And so you met everybody haircut first is what happened, which for bands, not a bad way to go. Honestly, they tell you what you need to know with their haircuts. So I was like, okay, maybe we can make that work. And we started doing it. And just like with the CDs, little by little, things got sloppy. And pretty soon I was writing about Cleveland shows that had happened that I had not been to. And my plan was to just say generic stuff that you could say about any rock concert. So I would be like, have you checked these guys out? They are such rebels. Oh my gosh. And did you notice that there was a fight by the bathroom? And that worked for every single show. So it was fine. And the more I lied about it, the more Justin would call me up and say, man, what a great job you're doing. This is so great. So finally he called and he was like, everything's going so well. I want to give you a big feature, all the pages you want, all the words you want. And I thought, how bad is this newspaper? They have words, they want some weirdo lady to just like say whatever. But I was like, anything that I want to write about. He's like, absolutely anything. And I was like, okay. So I wrote many pages about my very favorite 1960s sex cult leader, Father Yod. Father Yod is a real person who really led a sex cult in California in the 1960s. They made records, but mostly what they did was run around in see-through linen robes with no underwear and make celebrities excited to see them. They ran a little macrobiotic restaurant, and it was one dude, Father Yod, and a couple young men, and then like 25 hot girls in see-through clothing. And of course, they were extremely popular because that's something people like. And so their restaurant did very well, and they made a lot of extra money. And so they would, at night, when they were done running in the restaurant, they would go like upstairs into the back room, and they bought a bunch of guitars that they didn't know how to play, and they would just kind of fuck around on them. And then they made records out of those sessions and sold them at the cash register in the restaurant. Now, I wrote about them extensively and was very excited about it. And it was all kind of too much for a little paper in Cleveland. But Justin did such a good job promoting it that he was like, hey, guess what? I'm going to get your article picked up around the country. Every paper in the country is going to publish this big, fat, meandering article about Father Yod, the obscure nobody. And I was like, great, good for me. And I got paid, which was incredible. And then about 2 months later, I got a very angry phone call from a woman. You know, sometimes when a woman calls you on the phone and you can tell that she's wearing shoulder pads just from the way she sounds. I got a call from a woman like that. She was very upset. And it turned out that one of the men who used to be in Father Yod's cult back in the 1960s had read my article in his local paper in San Francisco. And he did not like that I insinuated that he did a lot of drugs and didn't wear any pants for 10 years. He was very insulted. So he wrote a letter to the local paper, and he threatened to sue them. And then this woman called me up and she was pissed. And I was like, okay, look, I can send you photos. This guy definitely didn't wear any pants. you can look at pictures of his face. He is clearly super high. I think, and she was like, okay, do you want to write a rebuttal, like a letter back to him? And I was like, sure, I would love to do that. She's like, all right, calmed her down. And then I sat down at my typewriter and I was like, dear Rainbow Jean, you are one of my favorite members of the Father Yod cult. I went as you one year for Halloween and nobody knew who I was. You definitely were completely high for many years in a row. And honestly, if you didn't, if you weren't participating in group orgies, it was just a matter, a lot like those CDs that came to me late. It was just like a matter of scheduling. And if you thought that your band was, do you think you sounded like U2? You guys were very inept. I'm sorry that that's insulting to you. Many people find that to be a compliment. And I wrote and sent it off, and Rainbow Jean was very mad at me still, is probably still mad at me to this day, but did not sue his local paper. Epilogue to that story, finally, after my writing job petered out, and finally about 5 years later, I was in a little artsy hardcore band. If you don't know what an artsy hardcore band is, it sounds just like a regular hardcore band, but the people in the band wear dumb costumes. That's really the difference. In my band, we wore silverware costumes. I was the fork, somebody else was the spoon, you get it. And we would get on stage and be like with guitars, and I would go and then the microphone, and 20-year-old kids, many who have Adam's apple sticking out, would be very excited about us. So we went on a little tour, which is a thing if you're an underground band you have to do, because if you are a little local band and you play for your friends, after about 2 or 3 performances, your friends hate you now, and you need to go out of town to play for other people. So we did that. We got in cars and drove around the country playing for little shows for people. And weird music shows don't, it has about as many people in the audience as this show does now, which is no people. So we didn't expect a ton of, we didn't expect like huge crowds or whatever. So we finally went to Cleveland, and we went to this little art gallery where we were going to play. And we got there, and there were like 30, 35 people milling around the place. And we were like, oh, this is a hopping place, like it seems cool here. And we played, and like more people came, and they seemed excited, and everybody was like watching and paying attention. And we were like, this place rules. This is so great. We make our sounds, we get very excited, we sweat a lot. And then as soon as we were done, I was like, man, this place is so great. And this woman runs up to the stage and she goes, are you Angela Sawyer? And I was like, I am. And she goes, man, I've been coming to shows in this town for like 10 years. Where have you been? And I was like, oh, well, it must have just been a matter of scheduling. Like we just missed each other and I ran away. And that is the story of how I got away with lying to the nice people of Cleveland for many years in a row. Okay. So you guys can tell me about your weird jobs, or I've given everybody a little theme, and everybody is in various states of not quite polished, and I'm excited for you guys to get to know them and to find out what we're going to do. I'm very thrilled for your next performer. She's fantastic. I listened to a podcast that she was interviewed on, just like about her life, and she's really, really charming. I've seen her do stand-up all over town, and she's fucking great. So please give it up right now for Ali Genero.
Yay! Hello, everyone. Sorry, I don't like looking at my face. So, I got a theme of a time I knew my parents were liars. And that was a little difficult for me because at an early age, my parents divorced when I was very young. So ever since then, I always think they're liars because they told me they loved each other. So they're fucking bullshit. But I want to preface, I'm going to do a spooky story. It's October, kind of close to Halloween, not really, but, you know, let's do a little spooky story, a little scary story. And I want to preface this by saying I'm a skeptic about ghosts and shit. I don't really believe in it. And my dad, who's a part of the story, doesn't believe in it at all. But I'm just gonna like say what happened, and you guys take it, and you figure out what you think. And if it gives you the EBGBs, a little spooky a little bit, definitely freaked me the fuck out. So after my dad and mom divorced, my dad got a girlfriend because he'd play it, and he got this girlfriend, but they broke up. Shit happens, but so my dad quickly went for like a house hunt, an apartment hunt for me and him, and the only place he could like find that was affordable was this duplex. It was just a duplex. It was in the fucking woods. I live in Western Massachusetts. And if you don't know about Western Massachusetts, a lot of fucking woods and country bumpkin fuckers. It's crazy. It's a whole different world. It's not just Boston. There's a bunch of other people. But yeah, so we were tucked into the fucking woods, right? And our neighbor was this like severe alcoholic. I'll be honest. He was a very bad alcoholic, but he was a nice guy. We played football sometimes. We played catch. It was interesting dynamic for a young child and an alcoholic neighbor. But you know, that's just life growing up in Western Massachusetts. So we moved into this duplex. Everything's going great. Unfortunately, first night, in the middle of the night, all of a sudden, I just hear these like bangs, and I'm not saying like knocks, like it's bang, 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 like it wakes me up from a dead sleep, and me being a young child almost pissed my bed. I was fucking terrified. That was a horrifying experience. So I go, I run to my dad, and I'm like, what's the deal? What's going on? Why is the house falling apart? I don't know. And he just rolls over and he's like, it's just the pipes. And I'm like, never heard pipes do that. But he got mad and was like, go the fuck back to bed. So the little child, I went back to bed. And all through the fucking night, bang, 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 bang. Like someone was hitting like a tin pipe, like fucking you're hitting pipes. Like they were probably pipes. But it was loud and obnoxious and terrifying. And this happened every fucking night. Every night. The whole time we were there, constant banging. And it got to the point where my dad and the neighbor had a conversation like, something's going on, like it's fucking obnoxious, you gotta figure it out. Nobody could figure out what was going on. Probably my dad just didn't even want to take care of it. But so that was happening. And then I didn't think of it, but obviously in the back of my mind I was thinking, our house is fucking haunted. Our duplex is haunted. And then one night, I was fucking hanging out. I was in my room. It was a decent-sized room. And I was playing NBA Jam, just fucking crushing it. I was on fire, doing the cool little tricks. My guy was fucking jumping in the air, doing slam dunks and shit. It was dope. And then what was weird, what happened this time, was I was on the opposite side of my room to which my door is, like to get into my room. And there was like, you know how there's a light switch and you know, you got the flippy boy and then there's the plate with the screws. There's like 2 screws usually. the plate wasn't screwed in, didn't have screws. It was just kind of sitting there. And I remind you, other side of the room, decent sized room, other side, complete other side. And that shit fell all the time. That plate just clanked to the ground, fell right down to the floor, and it would just be sitting there right in front of the light switch. I'm there playing NBA Jam. Fucking, I hear the fucking light switch plate fall. I've heard it so many fucking times. I ignore it completely. Mind you, yes, we have hardwood floors. But as I was sitting in the chair, the nameplate somehow got at least 10 feet away from the light switch and hit me in the back of the foot that I was sitting across from. Like I was sitting across from it. This terrifies me, obviously. It could have fucking fell, did some fucking kick flips and shit, and wound up over on my side of the room. Could have happened. I don't doubt that. But it was just a weird fucking coincidence. And then, so my dad, it could have been him breaking up with his girlfriend, but he was like always irritated. It was like dealing with like a totally different dad, but he broke up with his girlfriend, divorced with his wife, but it was just such a different vibe. Everything in that whole house just seemed very creepy. And so randomly one night I was asleep again, middle of the night, and all of a sudden I wake up to what feels like someone smacked me in the face, but like not hard, like as if someone like dueling whipped me with a glove, you know? And I woke up in the middle of the night, kind of nervous. What's going on? I'm distraught. And then I'm like looking around my bed thinking maybe like a bug hit me in the face. No bug, didn't see no bug. Maybe like a leaf flew through the window and like hit me in the face because I leave my window open. There's no leaf. And I went up to the window. There was nothing. There was a screen there. There was nothing, no holes or anything. Screen, open window. Nothing could have got in. So that was terrifying. Finally went back to sleep. And then a couple of weeks later, this is where it gets real fucking spooky. This is where it all comes together in one big, terrifying, chills down your back moment. I stayed home from school. I luckily got to stay home from school. I wasn't feeling too well. I was probably bullshitting. I was probably feeling fine. I was eating cereal, and I was watching, I think it was watching like Cat Dog or something like that. I was having a great time. And all of a sudden there was a knock on our door. And I didn't get it because I'm a shit child. But my dad comes over, opens the door, and sitting there is this little old lady, right? She looks super normal, totally sweet looking. Like she'd give you candy. She'd give you butterscotch candy. That's the kind of old lady you should imagine when I'm talking about this lady. And my dad was like, "So, why are you here? Like, who are you? What's going on?" And then she was like, "Hi, I just came here because I used to actually live in this house." And then my dad was like, "Oh, okay, cool. Did you want to like come around, like look around? Did you like leave something or anything?" She was like, kinda." And mind you, I'm sitting there listening to this whole conversation. And he was like, "What do you mean?" And she was like, "Well, my husband, I wanted to know if I could ask him to come home." And my dad was like, "What? What are you talking about?" And she was like, "Well, me and my husband used to live here, and he died here. And when I moved, he didn't follow me. He used to communicate with me, and he's not with me at this new house. Do you mind telling him to come home, follow me? And my dad, who does not believe in this shit, was just like, nope, what the fuck are you talking? He was like, okay, whatever. And then he just closed the door on this lady's face. It was the funniest shit I've ever seen. My dad just disrespected this old lady. And he was white as a sheet. And I was like, I almost shit my pants. I was a child. I was terrified. I'm like, all these things coming together at once, just like crescendoed. And it was like, oh, fucking ghost, I'm telling you. And literally, not even a couple of weeks, my dad wouldn't explain why, but we left that fucking house. My dad made up with his girlfriend and moved right back into that house. And that was one terrifying experience that I'm not sure if it's true or not. You take all the information that happened to me and you make your own decision and see if you think it's spooky. But I did. So that's my story.
Guys, give it up for Ali Tenero. That was fantastic. I love that your dad was like, the Amityville Horror is not happening here. We're leaving this place.
Oh, yeah.
Very good dad move.
Oh, yeah.
Also, I want to mention how right you are about Massachusetts being a place with too many trees. Most people who don't live around Boston or don't live in Massachusetts think that what it's like here is just like a guy who looks like Mark Wahlberg, who's like, hey kid, you're going to the courthouse, and he goes to the courthouse and just shoots someone in the face. And that is partly correct. We are that mad, but like we are that angry, but what you're missing is the fact that 2 minutes outside of downtown Boston, there are so many trees. This place is clogged with wood, and it is a very creepy place very quickly. There's a lot of windy roads, and for some reason, all houses, there are no ranch style houses. There's just like these kind of houses. So it's a weird place, and I appreciate that your dad was smart enough to run away from terrible things.
Me too.
It's good. Thank you very much. That was really great.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next performer, here to tell you a great story. I'm very excited for him. I've had the pleasure of seeing him on open mics around during quarantine that are virtual, and one of the nice things about it is that you get to meet people from far away. He's here from the middle of the country, and I hope that he's going to tell us what it's like there. Please put your hands together right now for Noah Saunders.
Hey, what's going on? First, that's the second very convincing supernatural story I've heard from someone I don't think is a compulsive liar. That's too many. Too many. And also, I'd like to apologize for my lighting. I know it looks like this is some like lost cutscene from a 70s porn movie or something. My facial hair pattern isn't helping the situation, but I'm in the past, and it looks like I'm in the past. So haha, that must suck for you guys. So I have 2 bits I want to do. One's raw, like a story. What my theme is breaking the law, and I just happen to have a bit that's kind of about that. So I'll just toss that in, but it's a quote unquote more refined bit. But I used to live in Washington, D.C. and I worked, the first year I lived there, it was right after college, I worked at a restaurant, and it was fun, right? It was my first time in the service industry or whatever. You get fucked up all the time. It's fun. And I had like a work crush, this girl, Tara, she had a boyfriend. And we threw a big party at my house, and I lived with 5 of my closest friends, some of which go all the way back to like elementary school. For whatever reason, we stayed friends. They went to college there, whatever. We threw this party, and also my reputation at this job was like very quiet, like keeps his head down, hard worker, Right. I wasn't like, I mean, I thought I was funny, but I wasn't like this big extroverted person. But anyway, at this party, my friend Matt, we called him Texas because he was from Texas. He had a very irresponsible pharmacist that would just give him gigantic bottles of Adderall so that he wouldn't have to refill his prescription. And he offered me one. I had never done that before. This is the breaking the law segment, using prescription drugs. I don't know. But then he said it was 30 milligrams in one tablet, which I feel like is a lot. And he said I should break it in half. But throughout my life, I've been afflicted with a go big or go home mentality. And I took the entire one, not having any idea how it would affect me. And I'm also very good at getting people to take shots. I don't drink anymore, but I wasn't like a destructive drinker. I'm bipolar, so that's why. But like, I was good. If you're very enthusiastic and you hand someone a shot and then you have a shot also and you just drink it, then they have to drink the shot. It's you just have a high tolerance. And so I would do that, and then I was blackout drunk. But I wasn't like slop. I was very like I was very active. I was a very active blackout, just chatting people up, mixing it up. And apparently I proposed to one of my coworkers, like Dominique Lowry, and we kissed on the lips. And she said yes. And we never called it off. So technically I am engaged. I should find her. It's been like 10 years, but maybe she's in DC. I hope I need her. I need you, Dominique. And then I made out with Tara, and then for a long time, just insane. And anyway, there were people like around, and then but then we hooked up for like a while, and I don't remember any of it. This is one of my first like major like sexual experiences, and we ended up dating for a whole year after that. So don't do drugs, but although this isn't a very like convincing argument to not do them, but anyway, and so that's that story. I left the service industry for a while. I worked in law offices. I spent a good part of my 20s deluding myself into thinking I wanted to be a lawyer, and then I lived abroad. I came back, and I most recently worked at a bar in River North, which is where the bars are in Chicago, downtown, next to the lobby of a hotel. A woman comes down, right? She's like a slim, petite, brunette type woman. And then I think she's in her late 30s / early 40s. Turns out she's 44 years of age. She tells me about her work. Apparently she makes soundtracks for indie movies. They're called screeners. I guess you get like a commission for each song the studio picks. It's like a playlist. And then she also works as an art broker for a few rock musicians who paint. Like if the lead singer of Korn paints when he's not touring, she helps put these paintings up in galleries and gets them sold. It was actually a different nu metal band, but I used Korn to protect her identity. But it was Limp Bizkit, if you must know. No, it was Incubus, actually. And I found her interesting. I found her attractive. I asked for her number. Fast forward, it's the next day. I'm in her hotel room. We hung out already. We got lunch. She offers me an Adderall. That's the theme of this set. It's 8 p.m. 8 p.m. I shouldn't know. It sounds like the beginning of some bad story. But it's not an HBO true crime show. But like, I shouldn't be doing stuff like that. I don't even drink, as I mentioned before. I know it's weird that a bartender doesn't drink. I just lie to people all day and say craft beers taste like pine nuts and orange blossoms, and I really have no idea. I just read the label. It's fine. But I accepted for whatever reason, and we proceeded to have one of those like ridiculous all night upper field like soul bearing conversations where we like revealed our pasts to each other. And I should mention she kind of hinted that it would be nice to have a place to stay that wasn't a hotel room until her condo was ready. And I didn't say no. I had just met this woman. After which we had the hot, uninhibited sex that only two mentally ill people can have. I fall asleep. I wake up. She's just on Instagram scrolling. I look at my phone. I see I have a text from like a friend with benefits, very casual situation. There's But this woman gets, we're still friends. We survived the friends with benefits thing. But this woman gets super jealous and clingy for no reason. She's like, you lied to me, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we make it through that, I think. And then she asks me if I mind if she turns on the TV. And I say, sure, as long as the volume's low, right? That's a reasonable concession to make at 4 a.m. And then she goes, are you trying to control me? And suddenly it's as if we're in the death throes of like a 7-year marriage. Like I can't get a word out. All my sentences are getting twisted. And finally she goes, you know what? I don't think this is going to work. And I say, you know what? You're right. I get all my shit. I finally leave. 10 minutes goes by. I get some of the most psycho texts I've ever received in my whole life. I block her. I'm just sitting on a crate in a 7-Eleven, like, oh my God, what is going on? And then she, that night I go to work and I get 3 calls from a no caller ID number, which I ignore. She comes down to the bar. I'm on the floor for this shift. I'm not behind the bar. I tell the GM what's happening. I take an early cut and leave. And then after I left, she asked to speak to the manager about me, as if hooking up with the bartender was part of her guest experience. I'm bipolar. She was probably borderline, match made in Pfizer. And this is a weird thing to end on. I just always tossed it. She didn't want to use condoms. She was like, what is your concern? STDs or me getting pregnant? 44. Wow, that's impressive. I was like, I like condoms. I like condoms. Anyway, that's my time. Thanks, guys, for having me on.
Guys, get over for Noah.
Yeah.
I feel like you had an experience that every 20-year-old woman who works in a shoe store has. You just like met a person who ran you through the alphabet of a relationship in one day.
Yeah.
It's very, very intense. I appreciate it. Thank you. Everybody has a different relationship to drugs, and they're fun, and you should figure out what your relationship is and figure out where your comfortable spot is. I, somewhat like Noah, I don't drink very much, but it's because I can't handle like cream cheese. Like I'm having trouble right now handling a plate of nachos that my roommate made. So I think heavy drugs are not for me. But I have occasionally, I'm somebody who gets sick a lot. I don't know if you have a friend like this. I'm the friend who gets sick all the time. And when I get sick, I forget what my relationship to drugs is supposed to be. I have no patience and no control or willpower or whatever when I'm sick. So I'm like, maybe that'll work. Maybe this will work. Maybe that'll work. So sometimes I make myself sicker by trying to cure whatever's wrong with me. So a couple of years ago, I got a really terrible head cold and a cough that just wouldn't go away. And it was like middle of the night, couldn't sleep, kept coughing. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go to a store and I'm going to buy something and I'm going to destroy this cough. I'm just going to get it done. So I went to a CVS and I bought like 4 bottles of cough syrup and just downed all of it. And then I thought I had died. I was convinced that I had stopped breathing and was just a ghost now. And it felt right. I didn't have a cough anymore, which was great. But I was like, well, I guess I just haunt this room for the rest of my life. Like managed to make it back from the CVS and I just shut myself in a room, down a bunch of cough syrup. And then I was like, okay, I just live in limbo world here now, not breathing, and that'll be fine. And I texted my friend Steve, who I was in a band with. I texted him and just said, hey, I'm a ghost now. And that is not a text that you send at 2:30 a.m. It's just not a thing that you should say. And it's not a thing that people don't drink should ever say. So my friend Steve was like, what's going on? And I was like, oh, nothing. I'm just I've died and I just don't breathe anymore. And he was like, something seems off with you. And I was like, no, everything's fine, just a ghost. And then he wrote back, I'm coming to your house. So he came to my house and he knocked on the door, and he had to knock for quite a while because I was busy not breathing. And then he opened the door and he was like, hey, are you all right? Seems like things are weird for you right now. And I was like, no, everything's fine. I'm just dead. I don't breathe these days. I'm just here in my room forever not breathing. That's just what is happening. And he was like, we're going to go to the ER. And I was like, I don't think they can do anything for dead people there. And he was like, no. We're going to go to the ER. So he puts me in a car, drives me to the hospital. And I meet an ER nurse. You know, we sit in the dumb room, and an ER nurse is like, so what's wrong with you? And I was like, nothing, I'm just a ghost. I just can't breathe. And she was like, so you don't seem like a ghost to me. And I was like, well, I don't know what's wrong with you, but like, this is what's happening. And she gives me a bunch of tests and goes away for forever, because that's what doctors do. And then she comes back and she's like, so did you maybe take any things before this happened? And I was like, nah, not that I know of. I have a cold. And she's like, yeah, did you take anything for your cold? And I was like, I was like, oh, I did have some cough syrup. And she was like, how much cough syrup? And I was like, oh, like 4 or 5 bottles. That's just what they had at the CVS. And she's like, oh, you are just very high. You are so motherfucking high, you dumb woman. Go home. You're just super, super high. And then she told Steve that I was not dead, just high. And that is a good ER experience, honestly. If you're gonna go to the emergency room, have them laugh at you. It means you live. So that is a reason why you should and or shouldn't take drugs. One more time for Noah, because he's great. That was a really fun story. I'm excited for your next performer. So your next performer is one of my favorite performers in Boston. He is certifiably out of his mind, and he makes every open mic and show that he attends a special time. Not too long ago, like 2 months ago, I think, time is gone now, but a couple months ago, I asked him to do this show, and he was like, I don't do the thing that is on your show, which was very conscientious of him. And I was like, well, what is it that you do? We'll just have a show where we do that. And so we had a show where everyone told a story in character just for him. So tonight we're going to have him try just telling a story as himself, who is already a fucking character. And I'm very excited for you guys to check him out. Please put your hands together right now for Lloyd Legacy Sharp.
Hi. Oh boy. Yes, here we are, October, spooky month. Unfortunately, I do not have a spook story. It's not a racial joke, or a tale about too much drugs and not enough commitment to being married. I actually am going to, based on the prompt I was given, which I will reveal at the end. Suspense. I am going to tell a story that I've not really, it's not new, but fits the diameter. Right now, I've been doing comedy for 4 years. I have been a karaoke attraction for like 3 years. There's some of my gear right back there. You see all the glittery stuff. And I have had a life free of toxic, let's call them not the best people to be around, for about 6 years. And in that time, I have been fortunate, and I'm blessed or free from him, but just fortunate to have been given the opportunities both professionally and personally that I've been afforded. And I've been lucky to have so many people that have accepted me for being me, which is not easy to do. And 10 years ago, and I've always been a big advocate and vocal about mental health and always being conscientious of taking care of this and the rest of it, because as a comedian here in Boston, I have noticed that a lot of us tend to forget that we're human, or we tend to not think it's okay to be human and give ourselves time to be human. And this line of creative pursuit, work, whatever you want to call it, we have a tendency to go and do because we don't want to not be where the action is, or not be where the opportunities are, or we don't want to be left behind when people start to rise. And we run ourselves. It's part of what we do, but we run ourselves sometimes, in some cases, maybe further into the ground than we need to. And I tell my peers, some of them are in this very room, I tell them all the time, when the mics go off and when there's nobody in the seats, there we are. And we're humans first, entertainers, whatever it is after that. And if we don't tend to that, if we don't have it here, and if we don't have it here, we can't do this effectively. And I learned this lesson a long time ago, because now I'm seen in the public eye, whatever. I don't have as high of an opinion of myself as others do. I say this based on what people tell me, that they argue with me whenever I try to argue with them. I'm seen as this inspirational superhero to a lot of people. And the ironic thing to me about that is 10 years ago, when I was surrounded by those not so healthy people that I was around before 2015, and when I was not exactly doing what was best for this and for this, you learn what it means to, not be there, to not be you, to not have enough to give as much as you feel like you have to. Not just now as a comedian, but back then just to survive, just to get to the next day. It's not easy when you have people around you that are taking advantage of you and sapping your life force to the point where you don't really feel like you want to, but not feeling like you have enough to get to the next day. It's like, long story short, here are 4 key points that are going to lead to the base of the story that I'm going to close on. In 1999, there was an incident on a school bus that, long story short, led me to living by the respect the ladies mantra that I live by today. And I don't have time to tell the whole story, but let's just say it was traumatic and it changed my life forever. In 2003, my mother died in my arms when I was 16 years old. In 2004, me and my father almost got thrown out of here by proxy of some of the debts that were not forgiven on my mother's behalf. And if all that wasn't enough, from that period up until about 2013, I was surrounded by people who thought they were doing the right thing, but that is narcissist for, we were taking advantage of you and don't want you to think we weren't doing that. And I could go on forever about what narcissism, gaslighting, just and obviously if you hear what happened to me through those pre-99, 2000, I'm not really at that point where I'm not 100% here. I'm not able to do what I can do now and just say, no, go away. Me and my father weren't there at that point. But at that point, you know what? Life was terrible. Just miserable. Just like, get up. Why do it when I can just not do that and have this not happen because I woke up? And the crux of all this is that all of these things that happened and the people around me that weren't making it any better, I tried to take my life 3 times. Once in 2008, twice in 2010, because I didn't think there was any point. Now, hindsight being 2020, among other things that 2020 are, what I realized is that if I had made a decision based on the moment, just because I didn't see the possibilities in the future, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you right now. And if there's anything I've learned, I became a seeing is believing believer firsthand. But what I've learned is that, and some people here can vouch for that. I say these things every day: never give up, never stay down, keep moving, all that kind of stuff. A lot of that I learned during those incidents that happened in the late 90s, early 2000s. And if there's anything that taught me that never make a permanent decision based on a temporary situation, even if you don't know it's temporary, is because if I had succeeded in 2008 or 2010 based on just what I saw, I didn't see this. I didn't see comedy. I didn't see MJ in New Hampshire. I didn't see people all over the world saying my catchphrases. I didn't see any of that good stuff. And if I had made the decision based on what happened in the moment, I would not have any of this. And that is why I always tell people, it's going to be very, very blunt. Don't kill yourself. You deserve a better send-off than that. Trust me, I know firsthand that you may not see it in the moment, but things can get better. And my prompt was, and this is a life thing, just life in general. My prompt was, when you sure it was going to be terrible, but it ended up being great. My life in general. Thank you.
Lloyd, thank you so much. Tell me how you won the championship belt on your shoulder.
Well then, actually, I'm part of a online game federation thing called Quarantine Action Wrestling.
Yeah.
It's run by David Thomas, some people in the Improv Boston community. And I actually won the championship in that federation. So I bought this to kind of play the gimmick, like
nice.
For that. But then me and my father were talking like, don't people in Boston comedy see you as kind of like the resident wrestler anyway? And I'm like, yeah. And he said, why don't you try to work the belt into your act a little bit? So
I appreciate it.
So I've been experimenting with that. Thanks for asking.
Of course, you are a champ. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lloyd is amazing. I love him to death. He makes every show that he's anywhere near better. And Lloyd is right. Trauma is a real thing that almost everybody goes through. And if you haven't, great. Good for you. But the rest of us have to mention it once in a while. We'll be all right. Here's what I want to say. I can identify with what Lloyd says because I'm estranged from my parents. I'm a very middle-aged white lady, and so when I tried to commit suicide is when I was 15, which is what us suburban white ladies do. We get it done early. And I was caught by my dad. He caught me with a bottle of pills that I wanted to take. And I was so upset when he caught me. I was just like, you're the reason. You can't take this away. You can't catch me with this stuff. And luckily I grew up and I'm doing pretty good now. And I'm glad that Lloyd and you guys are too. So I'll say one more terrible joke about it. Here's the thing. If you are, I've been estranged from my parents for many years, so I find it just normal, and sometimes people are freaked out by it. I turned 50 this year, and I got a text from my dad, that same guy, who I haven't talked to him since the 80s. And I got a text from him. And here's what I want to tell you. If you are going to text your child that you haven't seen in 30 full years, happy birthday, look up the date first and make sure you have it correct. Just take that extra, call somebody, just do that extra little double check, because if you get the date wrong, no one will want to talk to you. So my dad is still an idiot, and that's fine. I'm a different kind of idiot, and that's also good. All right, so I'm very excited for your next performer. She's so fantastic. She has been running a trivia show with Sean Carter. That is, there's a long running Boston show in Quincy that is a comedic debate where people do imaginary arguments, and it it's such a good show that it like spawned other shows. And one of them is one that she's been working on, and she's so lovely, like just one of my favorite performers to watch. Very, very funny. You guys are going to love her. Please put your hands together right now for May Keith.
Aw, thank you all. Angela, that was so nice what you said. Thank you. And thanks Lloyd, and thanks everyone for sharing. I love the storytelling show. So my theme that Angela gave me yesterday was about confronting danger. And this was actually a really challenging topic for me because anyone who knows me knows that I'm a very cautious person. I'm not really someone who walks on the dangerous side. So I was thinking about this a lot, and I was kind of thinking about why I am the way I am. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. So I am one of 6 children, and all 6 kids were born within a span of like 9 years. So my parents had 6 small kids running around at any given time. And like, I mean, if you've ever been around even one child, you know that, you know, kids basically try to kill themselves constantly. They're just constantly putting themselves in danger. And I think my parents kind of knew that like they couldn't keep an eye on all of us at once. And so they had to make us like a little bit more self-reliant and a little more aware of the danger around us. So they did this not just by like telling us about danger, but by being graphically descriptive about it to just an unbelievable extent. Like I never got like, hey, don't play in the street, it's dangerous. I got, don't play in the street. When I was a kid, we lived next to the highway, and one time these 2 cars came over the guardrail, and our neighbor found limbs in her backyard because people's arms got cut off. And even if you're looking both ways in the street, like you just don't know what's going to happen, so don't play in the street. So like those are the kind of warnings that I got. And I mean, it was with everything. Like I always check the back seat of my car before I get into it. I think a lot of people do, especially most women that I know. And like for most of us, you know, you check the back seat of your car because at some point someone was like, hey, check the back seat of your car, make sure there's no one waiting there. The reason I check my back seat is because of what in my family we refer to as the screwdriver story. And this is the story that my mom told me when I was 9 years old, so that she could teach me a couple of lessons. And I want to give a heads up that like the next 60 to 90 seconds are pretty graphic. So, I mean, if you kind of get triggered by like a graphically violent story, you know, maybe take a bathroom break or something. But so when I was 9, the story that my mom told me was about a friend of hers from high school who, after they had graduated, this woman stopped at a gas station one night to fill up her tank, went inside to pay, came back out to her car, and there was a man hiding in the backseat of her car. This man had her drive to an isolated location where he assaulted her. As he was attacking her, she found a screwdriver on the floor of her car and tried to use it to fight him off. But the attacker took the screwdriver from her and stabbed her in the neck. My mother then described how this man left her for dead and stole her car and drove away. And my mom gave a very graphic description about how this woman like held pressure on her wound and walked down to the road and flagged down someone for help. And thankfully this woman survived. But I was 9 years old when I heard this story. I mean, this has stuck with me for many, many years. And the reason my mom told the story was like, she wanted to teach me a couple of lessons. And the first one was always check the backseat of your car. Easy lesson. Oh my God, I still do that to this day. Every single time. The second point she wanted to make was always wear a seatbelt. Because as my mom went on to explain, you know, if someone's trying to kidnap you, if someone's trying to hijack your car, they're probably not buckled up. So if you are, instead of driving to a secondary location, drive straight into a telephone pole. My mom was like, this is probably the safer option. Again, 9 years old, can't drive yet, but this is the sort of a lesson that my mom is imparting on me. And the third lesson she taught me, and I think that this one is actually the most important, was that any weapon you bring into a situation can be used against you. So the first thing is you have to decide, you have to make a choice. Like, do I actually want to use this weapon? How do I want to continue this situation? But if you do decide to use it, your assailant should never see the weapon. They should just notice what's happening by like the 4th or 5th stab. Because my mom was very clear, you don't just try to like slash or threaten someone, you stab as many times as you can, as quickly as you can. Like that's the way. And that's great advice, because I mean, like to this day, when I watch movies and I see someone just do like one stab, I'm like, come on, any 9-year-old knows you gotta keep going. This is good advice. And so my dad, he's a cop. So for him, he was like, he was very focused on escaping emergency situations. So again, 6 kids, we'd be at the movie theater or something. And like, as the movie's getting started, he would kind of lean over and be like, all right, we have 7 rows in front of us to the emergency exit and 12 rows behind us. Make sure you count the rows. If something happens, get low, crawl, count the rows. Just kind of insanity for all of the children to know. Especially after Columbine happened, then my dad kind of started throwing stuff out there like, hey, if the fire alarm goes off, but you don't smell any smoke, wait a minute, see if you hear gunshots, because it might be a trap. It's an easy way to lure everyone to one location. So, go for the exit. That's being used a little less. Scope it out. Think about what makes sense. Where can someone inflict the most mass casualty and go somewhere else? All right, I'm 10, but sure, this is good information for me to have, Dad. So this is, these kinds of stories just happened all the time. And again, I think my parents just really felt like we needed this information. We needed to know this so that we could think about these things. And I took all of this information in, and I mean, good advice, if maybe not executed in the best way. And it really became just a huge part of who I am as a person. Like I was always planning and preparing, what's my escape? What's my exit strategy? What are my contingency plans? I was always looking up information that I do not need to know under any circumstances, like how to escape a bobcat or how to share a scuba tank. If someone's scuba tank goes like while you're underwater, like I'm not ever going scuba diving. I don't need that information. And what I didn't really realize though, was that like, it's not normal to constantly worry about this stuff and to have plan after contingency plan. And the issue too is that like, despite all of my planning, despite kind of imagining what this danger was and thinking of ways to kind of prepare myself against it, I still did stupid and dangerous shit all the time, right? Like I was still a teenager doing drugs at the park or like getting blackout drunk with people I didn't know or driving under those circumstances. So it didn't actually really make me any safer to think about this stuff or to focus on it. And again, I mean, the problem is like, you cannot plan for everything. And if you try, you absolutely will go insane. And as I got older and older, I started to realize too that like the dangerous things that I was afraid of and that I was planning for, those weren't really the things that were impacting the lives of like me and my friends and family, right? Like the things that were things like suicide or drug overdoses or like crushing financial debt. And then there's like the existential threats, like we have, global warming or political corruption or terrorism, just things that like you really can't plan for. They're just kind of happening and there's nothing you can do about it. And then there's always like kind of the day-to-day things, like just being in a red line train car with 200 other people and feeling like, oh my God, I can't breathe and I'm gonna die. I need to get off this train right now. And I think like none of your plans can change that. Traffic on the MBTA is what it is. And as crazy as this sounds, I did not know that I had an anxiety disorder. Like at 15, I knew I had clinical depression because, when you are self-harming and having suicidal ideation, like that's very clear. And I guess my therapists weren't very good because none of them picked up on the anxiety either. Like I was 25 years old before I was kind of like, I mean, doesn't everyone just kind of a couple times a week, you can't breathe and you kind of black out, and then you cry for a while and then it's okay. It's like, no, like those are panic attacks. You have a panic disorder. You're a very anxious person. So over the past like 7 years or so, I've kind of gotten back into therapy and, taken medication and gotten some coping techniques to get my anxiety under control. And what's interesting is that like, it hasn't changed the way I viewed the world. Like I still worry, like I'm always going to be a worrier, and I still make plans. I'm always going to have to kind of know what my plans are. And I am like never, ever not going to check the back seat of my car. Like that's a psychological scar that's there forever. But it's not like the outer boundary of who I am anymore. You know what I mean? Like it's not, those aren't the pieces that like I can't get past, and it doesn't consume me constantly. And I think kind of the biggest triumph that I've had over that is that right now, even though the world has just gotten so much objectively worse over the past few years, I'm actually 6 months pregnant right now. And like, I get that that's not really a brave thing, because that's kind of, I mean, that's a neutral thing. That's what we as a species do. We procreate. It's a very natural thing. And I mean, and given the current circumstances, I think a lot of people kind of look at childbirth as selfish in a lot of ways, which I think is a totally valid feeling to have. I mean, what kind of world is it that I'm bringing this child into? That's a really good question. But I mean, this is easily like the bravest thing that I have ever done. Because as an 11-year-old, this is a true story. When I went to go visit my newborn cousin in the hospital, I asked my father on the way there, I was like, what kind of security does the hospital have? Because a maternity ward seems like a really easy, soft target, doesn't it? Like, like these are the thoughts that I have had for 30 plus years. And so to kind of decide like, fuck it, you know, there's always going to be danger. There's always going to be things that like I can't plan for. And I just kind of have to hope that more things are going to go right than are going to go wrong. And I think the biggest thing to me that like, yeah, my panic attacks have been under control for a while, but the biggest thing for me that shows that like I've kind of overcome anxiety is I am so much more excited to like teach my kid how to ride a bike than I am afraid that they're going to get hit by a car. And like, I never thought, I mean, you know, I haven't given birth yet, so we'll see how long that lasts. But I never really thought that like that would be the case. So this really is kind of the bravest thing I've ever done, which was sort of my topic, was like confronting danger. And again, you know, I think everyone parents differently. And I do have to say that there are like 3 things my parents gave me that I want to make sure to give my children and make sure that like I'm a successful parent. So the first is just so that they know that they are loved regardless of like who they are, what they do, just providing that unconditional love. That's like the first thing. The second thing is just helping them find their way to happiness. Again, I mean, depression, anxiety, the horror of the world, all of it around us, just kind of helping to guide my kids so they can get there. But the third thing is that my child will absolutely have to know the proper technique for stabbing. So.
Guys, give it up for May Key.
Thanks, Angela.
Oh, May, you are extremely brave all the time. May is one of those people who fears nothing and like is super direct and right on the money with people every time. Here's what I want to know. When you and your newborn are stranded on a desert island, what will you do first? Will you find shelter? Will you find water? Do you have a plan for how to start a fire?
Okay, so Angela, you can live 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, 3 hours without shelter, 3 minutes without hope. That's what they say for survival.
Well, you have the hope down. And I think if anybody is going to figure out the other ones.
Situation, I'm just lying down. We're just going to sleep. Yeah.
But I do think the world that you bring your child into, first and foremost, is yours. So I feel like your baby will be extremely safe and very happy. And congratulations, both you and your husband. I hope you guys have a great time.
Thank you.
Of course. Okay, so we've got one more performer for you. I'm super excited. So your headliner for this evening, this guy I met here in Boston a couple of years ago when he came to visit a mutual friend of ours who is currently back living in California and running for office. And
yeah, he's running for city council.
He's running for city council, yeah. So I met him because he like tagged along to a storytelling show, and he like showed up at a storytelling show and like won it. He like slammed it out of nowhere, just like came in as no, didn't know anybody, and was so impressive that I was like, we need to make sure that we talk again a bunch of times. He's really fantastic, and you guys are going to love him. So I'll let you tell him about it. I'll let him tell you about his life, but I think you guys are in for a treat. Please put it together right now for Tito Gonzalez.
Hell yeah! Thank you, everybody. I hope this sounds good. Yeah, this is honestly like ever since I did that storytelling show, because like I'm so used to like stand-up format. I was like, oh yeah, it is fun to just really just talk and just like fully be in the moment. And if it wasn't for you, Angela, in your show, like I wouldn't have figured that out. So that's why I always hit you up.
No, I'm so psyched to have you.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But so I realize there's always, and I feel like in everybody there's like a part of you that you don't want people to see. Like you're like the part of you that like that goes home and just like screams into the fucking pillow. Like you're like, that's like, I don't want no one to see that part, but sometimes like that part just like falls through the cracks and people are like, that's you, and you're like, yeah, that's me. It is bad, you know. Like I for sure get like depressed at times, you know. And being from like a third world country, like I'm from Uruguay, and like we're like, is depression real? It's like like in Uruguay, like I never once heard about depression, right? And it's like, it's hard to be depressed when you're just hungry, you know. You don't have time to overthink, you know. And so like sometimes like with me, like I'll get mad, and then my anger is driven by the depression. So like I'll get sad about something, and then my brain is like 3 stages. I'm like, I'm sad, and then the second stage is like, but why? And the third stage is, I don't know. And that's the anger stage, you know. That's the shit that's like the third part. That's the part that I don't want people to see, because it's unexplained anger, and people are like I threw an orange the other day, just against the wall, just an orange, you know what I mean? Just one of those times where I'm just like, I was sad, I was like, but why? And I was like, I don't know. But I was like, the only logical answer here is to throw what's in your hand. What's in your hand, an orange? Throw it. Like it's like that should do good. It's like, no, now I gotta clean it. You know, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. It's weird. Like I should do like medication. Like I don't know. It's like I don't believe in that either, because like, what if I take medication and it helps, and it's like, then what am I gonna complain about? You know. It's like, you gotta have something to complain about, you know. Like that's kind of the fun part about life, is the yin and yang, you know. Like if I just fix that, then what? or I take the medication and have some fucked up side effects, you know. And then it's like, now I'm complaining about even more things. So I'm like, I'm just gonna roll with the stock parts in my brain, and I'm not gonna use any aftermarket parts. We're just gonna try to write this out until I stop throwing oranges. Like I think that's probably going to be the best way to do this. Just I'm surprised I still have the friends I have, because of like I've shown them that silly, stupid, angry side where they're like, why are you even angry? It doesn't make sense. Why you're angry? Like I used to have to like babysit my sisters all the time, because grew up in a single mother household, so it was always me and my sisters, and I had to like, and I would get bitter about that, which doesn't really make sense, because it's like, it's not even I'm babysitting, I'm playing a role in the family. Like that's what you're supposed to do. But like when coming out here, it's like all my friends are fucking out, and like, you know, I mean, they have money, so like, you know, they're sending their kids to like somewhere where other people are taking care of them. I didn't have that, so I was looking at them like my first dream was to be like a professional skateboarder, and I still skateboard, and I'm just like, man, I look at my sisters and I'm like, I'm not pro because of you guys. Like I had to fucking feed you, and now look at me, I have a regular job. It's terrible. But I used to always have to babysit them, and I mean, I'm glad, right? Because like, you know, when the alternative is like they would have to raise each other or something. Like I look at my sisters and I love them, and I think there's something about like the older sibling that's like, I'm not saying I'm a fuck up, but I'm not great, right? But like I think my sisters looked at me and they were like, we just, as long as we're not throwing oranges, I think we'll be okay. Let's not be like him. Let's just not be like him. And so like they already know where they want to go to college. You know what I mean? Like they plan it out. Like they'll be in the living room studying. I never studied. Like I think there's something like when like the older siblings just such a fuck up. They're like, well, not gonna end up like that one, you know, which is kind of cool. Like I'm glad I could play that role, I guess at least. But I used to always get so mad that I had to babysit them, you know. But I mean, yeah, like I'm glad I did though, right? Because like I try to do my best for my sisters. Like I try to always let them know, like, oh yeah, you know, you're beautiful, and then, like hug them. Because like one of my biggest like nightmares would be like if my sisters end up being strippers, you know. And people, I've gotten shit when I say that before. Because like, what? Where are you shaming sex workers? I'm like, I'm not. I just don't want my sisters making more money than me, you know. You know how embarrassing it would be to ask my sisters for I need bus fare because I gotta deal with it anyways. But I remember like I said, like I'm surprised my friends like even stay with me because I've been like just stupidly angry for no reason. Once again, it's just like I get depressed. Why? I don't know. And then something gets thrown for no reason. And it's not like a super violent thing. I don't want you guys to think like I'm a violent person. But like I just throw like stupid objects, and it's like it's not even like a good anger. It's just like it's like a silly like what you know. If it was like a good anger, like if I was like, then I don't know, maybe that'd be worse. But one day I was taking care of my sisters, and I couldn't. Like I said, I wanted to be a professional skateboarder. That was my first dream, and I could never go out and skate because I was always with my sisters. And I had two of my best friends over, and we were just like hanging out, and they were just waiting for me to come hang out with them. But I'm like, dude, I told you I gotta take care of my sisters, so I can't go out with you. Can't. And my sisters like needed like lunch, so like my friends come into the kitchen, and I'm like pulling out cereal because I'm like, this is probably like good lunch. I think this is gonna be fun, right? Like that's all I know, milk and this. This should do. And I get mad because once again, right? It's like I'm like, why am I getting mad that I can't go hang out with my friends because I'm being part of the family? Like my mom's working 2 jobs. Like why am I being such a like why am I being so stupid about this? Like why can't I in my brain realize like, hey, you know what? You have to take care of your sisters because your mom's working 2 jobs to put a roof over your head. Don't get mad. Why are you mad? Like this is just what you're supposed to do. Right. And I don't know if that has to do with depression or whatever, but like I think back at that now and like I should have just been like, yeah, this is just the job that I have right now and it's fine. But that's not the way you think when you're fucking like 16 and you want to do kickflips for a living, you know? And and I'm pulling out this cereal and they're like, yo, Tito, man, look, we've been hanging out with you for a while. After you give them their cereal, do you get to come outside with us? And then I just had one of those like stupid anger moments where I was like grabbing the cereal and I got angry. And then because I'm like, I don't get to go out and try to do kickflips for a living because of them. And then my brain's like, why are you angry? And then it hurts the third stage where I'm like, I don't know. And I just throw like a bag of Cheerios, like Fruit Loop, whatever the fuck it was. I just throw it at my friends. And so now both of my friends just have like fucking cereal all over their face. Like one of them catches the bag of cereal while my sister is there with her bowl. Like what? You know what I mean? So it's just like, and I think that's why my sisters are so much better than me because they're just watching me throw. Like, why does he throw food all the time? And at his friends, I thought he loved them. That was the first time I ever like just reached outrage in front of 2 of my best friends that they're still my best friends to this day. But like they saw a part of me, like you know when like people just see a ridiculous side of you, they can't just help but just to laugh, and then it makes you laugh, and then you're like, that was so ridiculous, you know. But that's a story. That's my prompt was a time everyone saw the real me. And I feel like that's the real me I try to hide from people, is when I'm like, but it's like my brain short circuits, and I just like something gets thrown for no reason. And yeah, that's the story. Thank you, everybody.
Guys, give it up for Tito. That was fantastic. Thank you. I want to say, first of all, Orange is very happy. Fuck those things. Like, they deserve to get smashed against a wall once in a while. They've had it too easy too long. Also, I definitely am like the thing that people catch me, my roommates catch me all the time, and they've caught me during quarantine almost every week. I'll be working from home, like typing to my people that I work with. And then one of my roommates will walk by, and then I will say at the top of my lungs to my computer, "Oh, come on," which makes me seem like a moron.
Me too.
Right?
And my roommates are like, ugh. And that goofy, like child Angela that they see is extremely embarrassing, and I
Right.
cannot turn it off. So yeah, my roommates have seen me freak out at my computer screen many times lately, and somehow they have not made me move out of the house. So I'm glad for that. And I know that also, if there's anything that a kid maybe be able to back me up on this, but I think if there's anything a kid needs, it's an older dude in her life who is shitty to his friends. Like, that's a thing that as a little girl you're like,
Yeah.
oh, this is what guys are like, and this is
Yeah,
how the
right.
world is, and it's really helpful. So you did a great job
Yeah, I mean,
helping raise
they're
your
very
sister.
successful already.
Yeah, and they know that you love them when they see that. So good job all around. That's our show. You guys were so fantastic. Every teller on here tonight was amazing. Please look them up from their Twitter handles or their Instagram. The Comedy Studio has shows just about every night of the week, and you can go to the Comedy Studio webpage to watch them for free. If you want to buy tickets to some of their weekend shows or donate to them, they take all of the contemporary forms of small money to make that happen, and they just give it to performers. And it's been really nice to talk to you guys. This was really, really fun, and I really feel like I know everybody who's on the show better, which is the only thing I'm ever looking for. And so thank you very much for hanging out with us. We'll see you again next Wednesday. And this has been Tales from the Inside.
Woo!
Ooh, pizza's here.